Holly here from Your Past is a Gift. All right, so today I'm super excited because I had a revelation over the weekend. I was speaking to another parent. I'm at the park with my little girl and she's playing with this other little girl. And so I got to talking to her dad. We're just sitting there talking. And somehow we got to talking about our parents and growing up and our different childhoods, you know. And funny enough, somehow in the conversation it came up. I was talking about, you know, my sister and how we're not very close and we don't have very much in common. And in previous videos, I have talked about, okay, for those of you, if this is your first video, when I was 5 years old, my sister was born. And at the time, I felt discarded. I felt tossed aside or cast aside, if you like, because my mum was spending all her time with this new baby. And for a 5-year-old that had had all the attention up until this point, you know, I wasn't included in any of the activities to do with this new baby. And so I felt separate from my sister, but at the same time, I also felt like I was no longer wanted by my mum. She didn't have any more time to spend with me. She was always busy with this new baby. You know, when I wasn't there, I was at school, you know. So that was my interpretation at the time. There's more in-depth explanation in the very first videos of what I went through and all the psychological, you know, all the things you make up about the world from this one event that happens to you. It can be the simplest thing like that, like a sister being born, you know, or a brother being born, and all of a sudden everything changes, you know. Now, there's also a lot of explanation as to why my mum did things that way, you know, that she didn't want me to be, having to change her nappies or to be feeding her or any of those. To her, they were chores, you see, and she had it in her mind that it was her responsibility to do that. I was a child in my mum's mind. And so it was my job to be a child, to have fun, to play, to do all those things, not to have to take care of my sister. To her, that was her responsibility. And in her mind, too big a responsibility to give to a 5-year-old if anything happened to that baby. You know, so she was always protecting her, keeping her safe. And the thing was, I didn't realize that, of course, she had done all of that for me 5 years prior. I didn't know all that. I couldn't remember all that. You don't remember what happens in your first 2 or 3 years, you know? So I'd forgotten that she had already done all of that for me. And all of a sudden, this new baby comes into our home and I felt completely excluded from everything, from all the activities that were happening with my sister. I felt separate, you know? And from that moment on, I became really devoted to my dad because I thought, well, my mum doesn't want me anymore. I'll, you know, spend more time with him. He has more time. And he made more time because he could see what was going on, you know, that I felt not wanted anymore by mum, you know. And so he made a lot of time, you know, when he wasn't working to be with me, to make me feel wanted and loved and all those wonderful things that children so desire, you know, from their parents, from both parents. Anyway, in previous videos, I also talked about the fact that growing up, you know, my mum had spent all my childhood years, I could remember her always saying to my sister, why can't you be more like your sister? You know, because at school, I loved school. You know, this was just me. It was in me. I loved learning. I loved reading. I loved everything about school. I just loved being at school, you know. And when I was little and watching it on Sesame Street, I couldn't wait to start school. You know, I was one of those kids that, get me in there. I want to go now, you know. And my whole experience through school, you know, when I was in the public school, in primary school, I loved it. I loved everything about it. I loved the teachers. I loved the learning. I loved everything. You know, there were a few years there where my parents put me in Catholic school. I'll talk about that in a different video because it's a totally different topic. Those few years were different because the focus there was different to the years that I had when I was in my public school. Anyway, so then what happened, of course, my mum was always comparing my sister because my sister didn't like reading. She didn't like learning. They were just things that didn't appeal to her. She didn't find the subjects at school interesting. There was nothing there that really, you know, inspired her to want to know more about it. So it just wasn't in her nature to be academic, you know. So she grew up her whole life being told, why can't you be more like your sister, you know. And it was when I was writing my book, when I started making all these notes in my book and writing all my memories down, that it came up, you know, that my sister and I are not close. And I get a feeling there was two reasons. One, for the longest time, was because I felt cast aside because she had come into my home. You know, for a long time, I felt invisible to my mum. So from my point of view, she kind of came in and I disappeared. You know, that was my view of what happened when she came. I was no longer wanted, you know, I had become invisible. And I spent most of especially my teen years, you know, feeling that way. And some of my adult years the same, having that feeling of being rejected, feeling invisible, not wanted anymore. So that was me. On her side, you know, as I was writing all these notes, I was thinking, if you're constantly being compared to someone else, you're being told you're not as good as that other person. You're not good enough, right? And so from her point of view, there's a resentment, you know, that she's not like me. And so from both sides, from my side and from her side, there's this huge wall between us, you know, of why we can't connect, we can't be friends, we can't get to know each other on a deeper level, you know. Now, I've worked through all that, you know, with my book and all this understanding. I have no problem sitting down and talking to her now, you know, but there is so much that has gone on over the years that, you know, I still need to wait for her to go through that process and understand and wake up, I guess is the word, you know, that I'm not the competition, you know, I'm not someone that she needs to be constantly striving to compete with, to get attention, to get acknowledgement, you know, all these things. So from her side, there was resentment. But at the park, the revelation I had, you know, because for a while there, I couldn't understand why my mum did that. Why do parents do that, you know? And then it dawned on me. I realized what happens is my parents, were immigrants. They migrated from their country to Australia. And for many, many immigrants, and I'm talking about lots of people out there now that migrated to Australia or to America or to other countries, in their mind, their children doing well at school and then going to university and getting a degree meant that they would be set for life. They would never ever have to worry about having financial problems, because many of these immigrants moved because of money issues. You know, they just couldn't, came from very poor backgrounds. They couldn't make ends meet in their country. And so they migrated in the hope that they could give their children a better future. And to them, a better future meant having good education, going to university, getting a degree. Then you were set for life. And so in my mum's eyes, if my sister did well at school, she would move on to go to university, get a degree, and she would be set for life. This was her view of the world, my mum's view. And that's why she pushed so hard for her to follow in my footsteps. You know, I mean, my mum was devastated when I dropped out of university. I was in my third year and I dropped out. And she didn't know what to do with herself. You know, she thought after all those years and after all that, you know, for me to not want to continue, that was very hard for her. You know, and to this day, she still says that she should have pushed harder for us to do more, for us to have finished, for us to have accomplished, at least got that degree, you know, to go into the world and be able to defend ourselves. So today I want you to think about many videos talk about the adults around you and the words that they've said to you and the things that they've made you do, okay? And understanding. Today this video is about understanding. And so we'll talk more in the next video because I don't want to go too long, okay? understanding the other person. It's so important. It's so important for you to understand. Okay, my darlings, remember to click like and subscribe below so you don't miss any of the messages, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.